Good afternoon. So today we will look at verse 34 of the 37 practices of bodhisattvas. This is about harsh speech. So it says, harsh words disturb the minds of others and cause deterioration in the bodhisattva's conduct. Therefore, give up harsh words which are unpleasant to others. So while thinking about this verse and what to say about it, I remembered an incident. It was about 15 years ago, I think, and I was in Australia doing a little teaching tour. And I spent a few days in Canberra teaching at the center there. And I was staying in the home of the director, the woman who was the director of the center. And she went out to work during the day, and I was home alone. And I was just sitting in my room in the morning doing my prayers. And the weather was really, really hot, probably over 100 degrees. So I had the window, there was no air conditioning, so I had the window open to try to get some fresh air in the room. And I heard voices from the house next door. The houses were quite close together, and they had their windows open too, so I could hear the voices quite clearly. I couldn't see the people, but it sounded like a woman and several small children. I assumed it was their mother, but she could have been a babysitter. And the children sounded like they were maybe just 2, 3, 4 years old, really small, these, little children's voices. And they would say something which sounded like a question, Mommy, blah, 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 blah. And then the woman would respond with this, wah, this harsh, angry voice to these little kids. And I just found it so disturbing and heartbreaking, to think of little children. I mean, children can be naughty, of course. They can be difficult. But, I just can't see how they could deserve that kind of response, to be talked to in that way. This went on for a while, and I was even thinking, should I go over and say something? But I'm not, I'm not their neighbor. I'm just a guest, and so it probably wouldn't do any good. But it was just a clear example of how harsh speech, harsh words can be disturbing to others. And I wasn't even the recipient of them. I was just overhearing it. But I was thinking, oh, these little kids, how that's going to affect them. I'm sure it's painful for them, and good chance that they will grow up and speak in that way. That this is what they're learning. If that was their mother, she's their primary caregiver and teacher. And if they're learning that's how you speak to people. Wow. So I think what this verse is saying, harsh words disturb the minds of others. I agree. I think it's very much true. And I can't imagine there'd be anybody who would hear harsh words, harsh speech, and feel happy, feel that that's a pleasant way of talking, a good way of talking. I'm sure most, if not all, people would find that disturbing, whether you are the recipient of those words or you're just overhearing it, like I was in that situation. So the advice is to try to give up this kind of speech. So how to do that? One way, I think, is just to really get a clear understanding of how this way of speaking is harmful, both to ourselves and others. We've probably all been in situations where we've spoken in a harsh way to others. So we can try to remember those experiences and ask ourselves, how did I feel about that? Did I feel good about talking that way? Maybe at the time it seemed like the right thing to do, it seemed justified, but how did I feel afterwards? Did I really feel, this is something I want to do more of and continue to do this? And then look at how it affects other people. How do other people feel when we speak that way, both the ones we're talking to and anybody else who may be overhearing it? I think if we really look at that carefully, we'll probably conclude that it's not a nice way of speaking. It's something we should really try to give up. And even if we do have a habit of speaking that way, we can change. It's always possible to change habits. They're not like carved in stone and totally permanent. They will be like that forever. We can also think about karma, because harsh speech is one of the 10 non-virtuous actions pointed out by the Buddha as the primary causes of suffering. So if we do engage in harsh speech, and if we do this a lot and with a lot of anger behind it, this could be the cause for bad rebirth in the future and other kinds of experiences. Even if we're born as a human being, we may have people talking to us that way. We may find ourselves in really harsh environments where there's a lot of fighting and anger and so forth. So if we look at those results of harsh speech, that'll probably also really prompt us to want to give it up. And as it mentions here, it causes deterioration in the bodhisattva's conduct. So if we do have admiration for the bodhisattva's way of life, the bodhisattva's path, then does this kind of speech have any place in that? Because the bodhisattva wants to help others, and this way of speaking, is it helpful? Now we might think, well, maybe sometimes it is. Sometimes if somebody's being really bad, naughty, doing wrong things, we need to speak to them. But even then, does it have to be done in a harsh way? Because I was once present when a Lama was scolding a disciple. This Lama was Rupa Rinpoche, and he was visiting our center in Singapore. And he was in his room, and the disciple was there, sitting on the floor. And I was going in and out changing the flowers, so I was just sort of noticing what was going on. And the only way I knew a scolding was happening was looking at the disciple, because he was sitting kind of all hunched over like this with an expression on his face like sheer misery, like a dog being beaten. But when I looked at the Lama, Rupa Rinpoche, he's an incredibly soft, gentle, kind, loving Lama. He always has this nice expression on his face, his tone of voice always nice. So he looked like normal. Soft and gentle and kind. His voice was really sweet. So, but he was giving a scolding. I found out later he was scolding the disciple for doing something wrong. So this shows that it is possible to scold somebody or point out faults in somebody without using harsh words and a harsh tone of voice. And in fact, it's probably more effective. Because if you can really show that you have love and compassion, that's where you're coming from. That's why you're pointing out this person's fault, then the person's probably more likely to listen to you than if you come across as angry and impatient and so on. So I think it's probably more effective in the long run. And then I came across this quotation from the Buddha when I was proofreading one of Venerable's books, book she's doing with His Holiness. I don't remember which book it was, but I really like this, so I copied it out. It's advice that the Buddha gave when others speak bad to you, because this is a situation where we might speak harshly. If somebody's speaking harshly to us, it could trigger that off, and we might find ourselves speaking in the same way back. So the Buddha advises, there are 5 courses of speech that others may use when they address you. Their speech may be timely or untimely, true or untrue, gentle or harsh, connected with good or with harm, spoken with a mind of loving kindness or with inner hate. You should train thus. Our minds will remain unaffected, and we shall utter no nasty words. We shall abide with compassion for their welfare, with a mind of loving kindness without inner hate. So this is what the Buddha advised, even if someone is speaking harshly to us, to maintain loving kindness and compassion and not respond in the same way. And last summer I was in California, and I was staying in a lady's house, and she had this poster on the wall. It was a picture of Michelle Obama. And a quotation from her. I don't remember the exact words, but it was something like, when others go low, you go high. Is that the right way? So apparently in her family, this is what they would say. If someone is treating you or speaking to you in a low way, meaning rough and nasty and so on, don't respond in the same way. Respond in a higher way, in a better way, in a more positive way. So I thought, that's really good advice. I wish everybody could hear that. Okay, so hopefully this will inspire us to try to speak with kindness and love and compassion and in a gentle way rather than a harsh way.